Wisconsin Eye's coverage of Campaign 2014 is being brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice supporting Wisconsin hospitals in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye coverage of the 2014 elections continues with an interview with State Representative Duey Stroebel of Cedarburg. He's a Republican candidate in the 6th Congressional District. Duey, thanks for stopping by Wisconsin Eye.
Well, thanks for having me.
Now, you've been in the Assembly 4 years.
Since May of 11.
And you, on your website, you call yourself a citizen legislator. So you're a citizen legislator that, tell us about the impact you've made in your 2 terms in the Assembly and the impact you hope to make in Congress, sir.
Sure. Well, I guess I'm going to start first off by just telling a little bit about me and who I am.
Please, sir.
And why I'm running for this position. I'm born and raised in Ozaukee County, so I've been a lifelong resident pretty much of the 6th Congressional District. And back in the 70s, my parents had a real estate business. And you will, I'm sure, remember the 70s. It was a challenging economic time. We had high unemployment, high inflation. We really had a stagnant economy. And I think a lot of those things were due to some of the government policies at that time. Those were the Carter years. So my parents, they worked hard, but they really kept losing ground, to tell you the truth. And ultimately, they lost most of what they had, and their marriage fell apart. So at a pretty early age, I was on my own, and I had to decide. I had to grow up fast, and I had to decide which direction I was going to go. So I decided to become an entrepreneur. And I sold pumpkins, I sold trees, I fixed cars, I baled hay. I did everything that I could, and was a very busy young fellow. And through that, I learned that through hard work, that I could succeed. So at a very young age, I bought my first piece of real estate. And as Murphy's Law would have it, not too far after I bought it, I received a condemnation notice that the city wanted to tear it down. So needless to say, that was a kick in the teeth. But it again helped me grow as a person to realize that I need to figure out how to fix this place up. I need to renovate this. And I learned that, and I did it. And I think I did a decent job, because in the end, the neighbor next door said, "Hey, do you want to sell that house?" And I said, "Sold." And that was the beginning of my real estate career. Which is really a foundation of who I am. And as far as more personal, I met my wife right before I went to graduate school at UW-Madison. And I must admit, the first date probably didn't go all that well. But I did the smartest thing of my life by calling her back a couple days later. And now I am a blessed man. We've been married happily for 27 years. I've got 8 kids, ages 8 to 24. And I couldn't really ask for more. So I've had a successful career. But along the way, I've noticed something. I've noticed that the reach of government has gone far beyond what it was when I was a young man, when I started my business. And I really believe that I've never been one to complain, and I thought something needed to be done about that. And so what I did, and I really feel that you have to participate in the system. You have to jump in. And I wanted to be part of fixing it, and I thought I could help. So I ran for the Assembly, and I won. And I realized right away that the world of politics is a lot different than the world that you and I live in, the real world.
The private business world?
It sure is. And common sense is sometimes a foreign commodity in the world of politics also. And there's just, the way I saw it is there's just too few people in elected office that really understand how jobs are created and how an economy is grown. And they don't have enough regard, I believe, oftentimes for how the laws they pass and the money they spend impacts us in the real world. And but I did learn that through sticking to your conservative principles and being a leader, you could get things done. And I did get, I feel, a lot of things done in the period of time that I was there.
What are you proudest of? Which one bill in your 4 years that you were lead sponsor of, sir?
I think probably the one would be the double dipping bill, which is the rehiring of retired annuitants back into the system, sometimes in as little as 30 days after they had quit that position, and then they come back and they collect both a salary and a pension at the same time. I just felt that was an abuse of the system. It wasn't what it was intended for. And we take pride in our our pension fund being 100% funded. But that comes at a true cost, a very steep cost from the taxpayer and now from the employees also. And so that seemed to be an abuse of the system, and I didn't really, quite frankly, blame the people who were doing it. I blamed the politicians that for years didn't address that situation because I felt it was inequitable. And it passed the Assembly my first session. It failed in the Senate to get a vote. But thank God for the governor who put it in his budget in this last biennium, and those provisions are now law in the state of Wisconsin.
Let's talk about some federal issues. Medicare, Social Security are on track to go bankrupt, although it's a few years out. How would you fix them, Mr. Stroebel?
Well, I feel we need a balanced budget amendment in this country. It needs to be part of our Constitution. We can't spend ourselves to prosperity. And right now, when you look at the entitlement programs, as much as we all want to do everything for everybody, government's too big. We just cannot afford it. And I think the last thing we want to do is provide entitlement programs that ultimately we have to dial back in a way that wouldn't be good in terms of the feasibility that they have in our country's budget. So what I think we need to do is we need to take some steps there. If you look at what the entitlements, how they're growing, I mean, they're going to be a huge portion of our total government expenditures in not that far from now, and it's going to inhibit our ability to deliver other services as well as our national defense. So we do need to do some things, but I think as we do these things, we cannot impact the people who are already in the system of Medicare or Social Security, or people who are near retirement.
So you're talking about future.
Yeah, we need to be sensitive to that.
Recipients of benefits.
Right. And as far as Medicare, I think we need more market-based solutions, more transparency, more consumers driving their health care decisions in terms of what they're buying and how they're buying, more power to the states. Just as we were able to receive the waiver for Badger Care in the state of Wisconsin and actually ensure or provide for health care for a lot more people than had the federal government done it. I believe that the same thing can occur if we look at more market-driven situations for Medicare. And as far as Social Security, almost the same with some issues with our retirement age that we're looking at for the state of Wisconsin. People are living longer, they're working longer. And Social Security does need to go up, but again, we don't want that to impact people who are near or people who are in the system. But I do believe that the retirement age, it only makes sense that be increased. And I also think that possibly there's some incentives that we can provide for people to defer taking Social Security that will be to their benefit, that would also help with that liability that we have for the federal government moving forward in that regard.
Well, we're talking about health care. Quoting here from your website, you want to repeal the Affordable Care Act, correct? Replace it with a system that allows free market principles to increase access, improve quality, foster innovation, and keep costs in check, right?
Yes.
So you'd go to Washington to repeal.
Yes, I do. We need to repeal it because it is systemically flawed. It will not work. And to sit there and tell people that you can fix something that is systemically flawed, I believe it's disingenuous. It's not right. Right now, we really haven't even had the rollout of Obamacare yet. And look what it's doing. People are losing their insurance. Costs are going up. They can't go to the doctors that they choose. They're not able to drive their future in their health care, and I think that's wrong. And I think this path that we're on is just moving more towards socialized medicine and more towards ultimately single payer. And I don't think that's going to be a win for anyone. So, and we can't afford it. Again, we look at our entitlements and we look at the cost explosion. We can't afford it.
You've heard the president say, though, that more than 7 million people have signed up under the Affordable Care Act. Your response to that when the president says it?
Well, my response to that is they had to. I mean, it's the law. And if you don't, you'll receive a fine from the IRS. At least that's what they said to begin with. Now they're backing off on that. I mean, to be thrilled about people signing up for a program when they had a hammer over their head to sign up for the program, I'm not really sure, what that really says, but they had to. And in the end, this is costing us more money, and it's not helping our insurance system. We're not really picking up more insured in this process. We're just it's just costing us more, and we're losing our freedoms in terms of directing our health care. So we need to move more towards a market-based world in terms of our health care. Now, I'm not saying go back to where we were prior to Obamacare. I don't believe that anyone wants to do that. There are reforms that need to be made. And again, selling across state lines, utilizing tax credits, enhancing portability, again, having consumers drive their decision-making processes, high-risk insurance pools, HSAs. I believe there's things that we can do that are going to help our healthcare system. But again, going down the road of socialized medicine and single-payer insurance, it's just not going to work.
A quick follow-up on that issue. Would you keep the changes, no pre-existing condition and no cap on total benefits, sir?
I would definitely keep the pre-existing conditions, as well as the insuring the kids, the older children.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look.
Those that are up to 26 on their parents.
Correct. I'd have to look a little more at the issue regarding a lifetime caps.
Lifetime cap.
Yeah.
Another major issue in Washington. What are your thoughts on those that are in this country from other countries, and they're not legal status? Should there be a path to citizenship for those immigrants, sir?
No, I don't support a path to citizenship for those who break our laws and come here illegally. That's not right. I believe in immigration reform, and immigration is important to our country. We are the melting pot of the world, and it's made us who we are. But again, that's legal immigration, and that is where we need to be focused on. I think before we can even talk much about immigration at all, we need to secure our borders. We see what's going on right now as we speak with people flooding over into our borders.
Especially children. You've seen these recent stories.
Right.
That, thousands of children are coming up from Honduras, Ecuador. What should the United States do with them? Should it offer them the ability to go to their relatives' home if their relatives are here legally? Is it possible to send them all back, sir?
Well, yeah, put it this way: it's the people who are here illegally. We need to find a way for them they will maintain their immigrant status, but to be here legally. But first off, we have to send back the people who have committed crimes and aren't producing for this country here. Those are the people that, yes, we cannot have in this country, because all they're going to do, they'll cost us money and they won't be productive in our society here. But certainly there are many that are and that do contribute to the society here, and we need to find a way for them to be legal immigrants, pay taxes, and participate in our system. But again, I do not support in any way, shape, or form a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants or for people who do come here illegally.
Thank you. You've heard some Democrats saying there should be a constitutional amendment to overturn the Citizens United ruling. Campaign finance is an issue. The McCutcheon ruling recently came out. When Democrats say let's amend the Constitution, how do you feel about Citizens United, sir?
Well, I'm not in favor of doing anything that will weaken our First Amendment, our right to free speech. I mean, we're for the United States. I mean, that is something that we cherish. That is incredibly important to who we are and how we became what we have been, and our system of government. So I'm opposed to that. Am I for all types of transparency in campaign finance laws? Yes. Mm-hmm. But anything that gets near to limiting free speech, I'm not for that. And understand, of course, with Citizens United, they can't give money directly to candidates, but they can certainly advocate for their positions in independent third-party expenditures. And again, we don't want to weaken the right to free speech in this country. That would be a mistake.
So third-party groups have a free speech right to spend whatever they can raise. Do you think they should have to report who gave them that money, sir?
I think our existing laws in that regard are acceptable, and I'm with the Supreme Court as to where they came down on that issue.
Well, just a quick follow-up. Do you plan to largely self-fund your own campaign then?
I will be funding some of my campaign, but I do know there's a lot of other people out there that believe the way I do and support me, and I expect that they will be supporting my campaign in this process also.
I want to ask you about taxation, because that's another part of your website, sir. Our tax system is a mess. Quoting from your website, we haven't overhauled the tax code in nearly 30 years. Currently around 4 million words long. We must implement a simpler, more efficient tax system that is easier for everyone to understand. Is that an endorsement of the flat tax, Mr. Stroebel?
Moving in that direction, yes. Whether we actually get to the flat tax by definition, I'm not sure, but we definitely need to move more in that direction.
International terrorism. What does the U.S. learn from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, sir? The lessons?
Well, as far as our military is concerned, it is the most important thing that our government does for us as citizens of the United States. Mm-hmm. And we had to hunt down the terrorists that were being in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. That was essential to our national security. And but I'm not talking about us being a policeman for the world. But again, what is in the best interest of our national security? That's what we need to be focused upon. And I believe that the terrorism threat is definitely a menace to our country, and is something that we do need to focus on for our national security. Now, we need to provide our armed forces all the help and funding that they need to do their job properly. But again, it's for our national security that they're going out and doing those things. Again, not being the policeman to the world.
Related to that, what's your reaction to the Veterans Administration scandal in Washington, sir?
Well, I think that really foretells the future of Obamacare. I mean, when you really look at it, rationing, under service, lack of quality service, and just you can see the corruption that evolves out of the bureaucracy when it's involved in something like that. So, and it's kind of humorous. It's not humorous, but it's sad that, or maybe even telling, that the way we're going to begin to fix this problem is actually give our veterans the right to go to the private sector to receive that health care.
Yes.
You know, there's nothing more sacred than the health care that we need to provide to our veterans for the sacrifices that they have made for this country. And what is going on in that system right now is just despicable. And if we cannot provide proper health care for our veterans, how in the world do we expect to provide health care for every citizen in the United States through what will ultimately be a government-run system?
So if you were representing the 6th District, you'd be voting for the bill now making its way through Congress that would allow veterans to get their health care from private physicians and vendors?
I believe that would be a direction that we would need to go to fix that problem. Again, more towards privatization and more towards market-based solutions to our healthcare issues.
I want to ask you about two other recent issues. Do you believe the exchange of 5 Taliban terrorists for 1 U.S. soldier was a fair exchange?
Well, I don't think all the facts are out on that issue yet, but on the surface, the way I see it, no. These are terrorists that we released, 5 high-level terrorists. And yes, I'm happy that Sergeant Bergdahl is back, but what type of precedent are we setting for the future? Negotiating with terrorists for a deal like this. Plus, it was against the law in how we did it. The president needed to give notice to our Congress, and a 30-day notice, I believe, and that wasn't done. That law was ignored. Another law that this administration just seems to be just ignoring. And through presidential fiat or what have you, it's just not the way this system is supposed to operate. And you know, getting back to that issue, I have great concerns as to when you set precedent like that as to where it's going to go. Plus, you also have the issue there with Sergeant Bergdahl that, and I know all the facts aren't out, but there seems to be a lot of anecdotal information out there that he may quite well have been a deserter. And at what price, you know, are we also looking at someone who possibly willingly left his post, that we are giving away 5 high-level terrorists that I think anyone with common sense is going to understand that's going to come back to haunt us someday.
And then one more issue that's just recently appeared, your reaction to Judge Crabb's ruling saying that constitutional prohibition on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. Your reaction, sir?
Yeah. Well, it's an overreach of a federal judge over the will of the people which was by the referendum in the state of Wisconsin. Now, I believe that marriage is between one man and one woman. I'm a Christian. Those are my beliefs. If we're going to move in another direction, it certainly shouldn't be the courts telling us that. It's a states' rights issue the way I see it to begin with. And if those states deem that that's through the people, that that's the direction that it will go, I can accept that. I personally will not accept that, and those will not be my personal belief system, but I understand we're in there's democracy in that regard, and if that's the direction that the people go, then so be it. But we shouldn't be told that by a federal judge. And no matter what, we all have the rights to our own freedom of religion and our own individual beliefs. And those are my beliefs, personal beliefs, that I will live my life by.
If the Supreme Court ultimately decides this and says that same-sex marriage in America must be legalized, what would your response be as a member of Congress?
I think that would be an overreach, because I think that's a states' rights issue.
Okay. I want to give you a chance. You have two opponents in the August 12th primary. Could you talk about, if you choose to, any differences between Senator Leibham and Senator Grothman?
Sure. The way I differentiate myself is I'm from the private sector. I'm not a career politician. And when I go out there and I talk to people, it really resonates. They're just sick and tired of career politicians. And the belief is that they go off and they really forget about who they're representing and what they're doing. And really both sides of the aisle, to tell you the truth. When you've been there long enough, and the way you make your living is to receive a check from the government, to have this political job, that's not what our founding fathers intended for. They intended for citizen legislators. People would go into government and ultimately come out and live under the rules that they created, not just to be and make these rules that the rest of the people live by, and they live in their bubble. And I believe that when you come from the private sector, you have that common sense. I've created jobs. I've run a business. I make a payroll. I understand how these regulations affect this country. I have a family. I'm raising kids. My wife and I, we've got our 8 kids. So we come from the real world. And I think we need more politicians from the real world that are involved in making our policies, and less of the political professionals that seem to dominate now. I believe they're the ones who got us into this mess, and I don't think they're going to be the ones to get us out of this mess, because we need bold leadership right now. And I just think from people who look at this as a way that it's like going to the office for them, we're not going to get that bold leadership from those types of people.
Just yesterday, voters in Virginia defeated House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. He was defeated by a Tea Party candidate. Are you encouraged by that? Are you running the same type of campaign as the person who defeated Mr. Cantor?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I'm not all that intimately familiar with what his campaign is.
Okay.
But I think it is indicative of the frustration that people do have with career politicians and the representation that they're getting, and the frustration that they have with their government, that they are being forgotten right now. I also believe that Cantor's some of his comments regarding immigration were certainly damaging to him, as they should have been. But I think more so, it's just a frustration with career politicians and wanting fresh faces and new blood. As when you come from the private sector, you understand you are not irreplaceable, and no elected official is irreplaceable. And I think that getting new people and fresh faces is always a good thing in government.
The role of the Tea Party in the primary. Do you consider yourself a Tea Party candidate, Mr. Stroebel?
I don't really consider myself a Tea Party candidate, but I do look at a lot of the things that the Tea Party believes in terms of smaller government, less regulation, more liberties, individual freedoms, and I agree with them. Now, so I would hope that they would endorse me, because I do believe I share some beliefs with them, but I'm a conservative Republican is what I am.
Well, final question. I want to give you a chance to highlight any of your campaign issues that I haven't asked about, sir. Anything come to mind?
Again, we are working extremely hard to get out in the district, and we've got a good team together, and I do believe that my message resonates in terms of from the private sector and not a career politician. And I believe that those skills that I've learned in the private sector, I'm a numbers person. And when you look at the debt and the deficit, that's really where I'm going to be focusing on, the debt and the deficit. Because I think when we focus on those things, we can control the size of government, and thus we are going to be able to have a government that is going to be more what got us to the greatness that we are, that we have been. I believe we're trending away from that greatness. We have to get back to that greatness. And the way we need to do that is get back to where we came from, with those individual liberties, rights, and freedoms, and constrain the size of government and keep that power with the people, not with the government.
Thank you. State Representative Duey Stroebel of Cedarburg is a Republican candidate in the 6th Congressional District. The primary is August 12th. Mr. Stroebel, thanks for coming into Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.